Hey, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel. My name is Gabby, and today I'm going to be doing a video talking about all of the recent movies and TV shows that I've been watching. I started this video series on my channel a couple of years ago now. This is probably the 12th or 13th video that I've done in this series called What I've Watched, and it's basically just where I go over the recent movies and TV shows that I've been watching over the last few months, because if you didn't know, not only am I a huge lover of books, I'm also a huge lover of film and TV, and so I just wanted a place on this channel where I could talk about all of the recent things that I've been watching. And I haven't actually done one of these videos since March this year, so this is actually going to be catching you up on everything that I've watched since March. Before we do jump into the movies and TV shows, I just wanted to say a huge thank you to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Skillshare is an online learning community with thousands of inspiring classes for creators. Explore new skills, deepen existing passions, and get lost in creativity. It's curated specifically for learning, meaning that there are no ads, and they're always launching new premium classes so that you can stay focused and follow wherever your creativity takes you. Practice makes progress, and there's nothing better than getting better. I recently just started taking this class called Creating Your Dream Career, Uncover and Apply Your Creative Strengths, and I think that this is a really great class because it helps you navigate your future creative path if that's what you want to do. It really helps you take inventory of the things that you're good at and then how to apply those to a creative career. But of course, if this class doesn't interest you, they also offer creative classes in many different topics like animation, design, illustration, creative writing, directing, film. It's all there. So the first 1,000 of my subscribers to click the link in my description will get a 1-month free trial of Skillshare's premium membership so that you can start exploring your creativity. And thanks again so much to Skillshare for sponsoring today's video. Now, let's get into the movies! The first movie I wanted to talk about is the movie Minari. This was a beautiful Oscar-winning movie this year. And honestly, this was one of my favorite movies that was nominated at the Oscars this year. I thought this movie was absolutely stunning, so well done. This movie is about this Korean family who moves from Korea to the United States in the 1980s. And this movie has one of the best scores that I've ever heard. It has a really, really beautiful music sound in the background. And also, I mainly watched this movie because I love Steven Yeun. Ever since I watched The Walking Dead, he's just been one of my favorite actors, so absolutely loved him in this. Like, he was so good in this. And I also thought the kids were really great in this movie. Like, the acting was freaking on point. And also the ending of this movie just like gave me chills, and it also kind of made me cry. Like, it was just a really, really well done movie. The next movie I ended up watching was Train to Busan, and this is a movie that I got highly, highly recommended in my last video like this when I asked for a bunch of Korean thriller recommendations, and this one was highly recommended because this one is a Korean thriller that's kind of like a zombie apocalypse movie, and I feel like this is one of the best zombie apocalypse movies that I've ever seen. This movie is just so much fun to watch. It has really great characters, it has non-stop action, it's just like so intense the entire movie, and I actually cried at the end, like a little bitch. I cried. It was beautiful, and I feel like this is one of the only zombie movies that have ever made me cry and like give a shit. So that's amazing. I highly, highly recommend this movie if you're looking for more Korean thrillers or just a really good zombie apocalypse movie. The next movie I ended up watching was Moxie, which was on Netflix. The main reason why I wanted to watch this is because it was directed and produced by Amy Poehler, so I was very curious in it for that reason. And no, I haven't read the book that this movie is based on. But I thought this movie was good, but I definitely had some issues with it. But I will admit that I do wish I had a movie like this when I was a teenage girl in high school, because I do feel like this movie is very feminist, and it's very, you know, it shows you the different toxic things that boys can do at school that you think is like okay when you're that age, and it kind of points out how those things are not okay. I feel like I didn't really have anything like this when I was in high school, and as a young girl I probably would have appreciated this movie a lot more. But I just definitely had some like nitpicky issues with it, like the fact that the main character was like the most bland, boring character I've ever seen in my life, and I don't know why she was the main character when there were so many other interesting side characters that could have made for a really interesting main character, but you know. Then we watched Godzilla vs. Kong. This is a movie that I was highly, highly anticipating because I have loved all the new Godzilla movies like so freaking much. But honestly, this movie was pretty disappointing, and I feel like it was disappointing for a number of reasons for me. The main one was that it felt more like a Kong movie than a Godzilla movie, because Godzilla, I felt like he was like barely in it, and I feel like Kong got way more screen time, which is like fine, but I just don't, like, I didn't watch it for Kong, you know, like I watched it for Godzilla. And then also, like, this movie showed all of the big fight scenes like in the trailers. Like, there was only like 3 major fight scenes, and I felt like they were pretty easily resolved. Like, I don't know, I just wanted a little bit more from this movie. I will admit though, the last fight scene that they had in the city was pretty epic. Like, that was what we were here for, you know? But I just wanted something more. And also, I did not give a shit about any of these characters. Like, I thought all the characters were so, like, one-dimensional and just like boring to watch. Like, I was just like so bored throughout all the scenes with the humans in them, and then finally it would get interesting when Kong or Godzilla would be back on screen. But I don't know, for the most part I found this to be pretty disappointing. And then I watched Operation Varsity Blues College Admission on Netflix. This is like a documentary, and it's like a true story about all of these, you know, kids and their parents. Like, the parents were bribing the schools and the teachers in the schools to get their kids into Ivy Leagues. Oh my god, this was one hot mess of a situation. Like, I cannot believe that this shit was real. But it was a very, very fascinating documentary, and I highly recommend checking it out if you want to learn more about it, because I knew very little of this situation before watching it, and it was just like, what the heck? Freaking eat the rich. Anyways, on to the next. The next movie I watched was Thunder Force. Oh my god, I couldn't even get through this movie. I shut it off like halfway through, gave it 1 star, do not recommend. This movie, it's like, it's trying so hard to be funny that it's just actively not funny. And then I watched the movie Unpregnant. This movie was actually so surprising with how much I enjoyed it, because this is about these girls who, they used to be best friends, but they had kind of like a falling out, and now the more popular girl out of the 2 friends finds herself pregnant, and in the state that they're living in, they don't allow for abortions. So she asks her old ex-best friend if she can give her a ride, because she's like one of the only people she knows that has a car besides like people in her family, but she doesn't want her family to know. So she asks her if she can give her a ride to like the next state over so that she can get an abortion. And so that's like the main thing that's happening in this movie, and we're following them on this road trip. And this movie was actually just, it was so good. Like, I cared so much about both of these girls, and I feel like, I don't know, I just find teenage girl friendships to be so fascinating, and especially for reasons why they fell apart in the first place. And this was just a really beautiful ass movie. Like, I just really genuinely loved their friendship. I loved the themes in this movie. It was just, it was touching. It almost made me cry. Then we watched The Woman in the Window, which this one actually surprised me too, because I had heard some pretty bad reviews of this movie. Like, I know everybody says the third act sucks, and like, you're not wrong, but I think because I went into it expecting not to like it, I think I ended up enjoying it a little bit more than I would have. But I mean, for perspective, I did DNF this book. It was like one of my least favorite books, so I kind of already went into it not expecting great things, but I really love Amy Adams. And if you didn't know, the general premise is that Amy Adams' character, she's like our main protagonist in this movie, and she doesn't ever leave her house. And one day she witnesses what she thinks is her neighbor getting murdered. And the story just kind of really takes off from there. It's a really fascinating, like, intense thriller, but we're following from Amy Adams, who, you know, we don't know if she's a trustworthy narrator because she's a little bit mentally unhinged herself. So it makes for, you know, a pretty interesting thriller. Like, I don't know, I will agree with everyone that, you know, the third act of this movie does get kind of cheesy, but I don't know, for the most part, I really enjoyed this. Like, I thought it was, I mean, it was better than I thought it was gonna be. And then I saw A Quiet Place 2, and this was the first movie that I finally saw back in theaters again, and it was such a great movie to see in theaters for the first time, like, after like over a year of not being in the movie theater, because this movie deserves to be seen on the big screen. This movie is epic. A Quiet Place, the first one, was one of my favorite movies of that year that it came out. I just absolutely adore Emily Blunt and John Krasinski. Oh my god, they're amazing. I just had such a great time with this movie. Like, this movie has one of the best opening scenes for a movie. Like, my heart was fucking racing. And I feel like this movie, I don't know about you, but I feel like it was a little bit scarier than the first movie, at least for me. Like, the jump scares in this movie freaking hit. Like, oh my god, I was jumping in my seat. I mean, maybe it's just because I hadn't been to a movie theater in a while, you know, but woof. That was intense. And I did really end up like loving the story, even though I do think some of the characters were frustrating with their decision-making skills in this movie for sure. But at the end of the day, like, it was just a really fun, you know, intense alien movie. Like, what more could I want? And then the next movie I watched was The Conjuring, The Devil Made Me Do It. And this was another one of my least favorite movies that I've ever seen. I'm a pretty big fan of The Conjuring as a series. I mean, I really loved the first movie. Like, the first movie is absolutely iconic. But then I didn't really like the second movie. And I think this is the third movie. I don't even know. But this movie was definitely the most disappointing to me out of all of the Conjuring movies that I've seen so far. This one, I wanted to shut it off multiple times while watching this, but I was actually watching it with my sister and her boyfriend, so like, I don't want to be rude. But like, oh my god, it sucked so bad. It wasn't even scary, and like, the plot was just so dry. Like, I don't know, even the CGI like wasn't great. Like, ugh, this movie was just such a bore. Oh my god. Like, the only reason I keep watching these movies is because I love Vera Farmiga and I love the relationship she has with the dude in this movie. Like, they're cute, you know, I ship it. But like, ugh. Like, what is happening in this franchise? Like, these movies are just getting worse and worse. But then the next movie that I watched was In the Heights. And oh my god, In the Heights might be my favorite movie that I've seen this year. And it's crazy because I don't even really consider myself to be like a musical person. Like, musicals are really like hit or miss for me, you know? Like, I never know how I'm gonna feel about them. But this movie was, it was just everything. I went and saw this in theaters with my mom and I was just sitting there crying a lot. I mean, there was one thing in this movie that happened that hit a little bit too close to home. You know, like, we were very triggered, but nonetheless, this was such a beautiful ass movie. We saw it in IMAX and it was just like amazing. The music was amazing. I like loved the main actor. Like, I genuinely adore him so much. Like, he has all these like freckles all over his face and he's just a stunning human. But also just, it was so much fun. Like, I thought the songs were so good. It was very like Hamilton vibes, you know, because it's from the same creator as Hamilton. But like the songs, you could definitely tell were inspired because they had that like speaking rap like flow to them. Like, I don't know how else to explain it, but it was just so good. And this movie just made me want to go back to New York so badly because the whole movie takes place in Washington Heights, which is in New York. And the New York vibes, But I thought my favorite dance numbers in this movie was either like the opening scene when they're like all in the street, or I really loved the pool dance number. Like, oh my god. They were all just so good. And every time I think about this movie, it just makes me happy and I just want to rewatch it all the time. And then I watched the movie Fatherhood. I actually watched this with my dad on Father's Day because my dad really loves Kevin Hart and we saw that this got uploaded onto Netflix. Damn, okay, this movie is a little bit sadder than I was expecting for a like romantic kind of comedy movie, but also, holy shit, I did not realize until after I watched this movie that this was based on a book that I have read, because this is based on the book Two Kisses for Maddie, which is a non-fiction book that I actually read when I was in high school, when I was like just starting to get back into reading, and I absolutely loved that book. And so I don't know why I didn't put it together until after we watched it that it was inspired from that book. Oh my god, I loved this movie so much. Like, Kevin Hart in this movie is just so, he's so funny but just so like heartwarming, and just, he's such a great person to watch on screen, you know? Like, he's just so relatable. The romance in this movie was also really cute. I just loved Kevin Hart's relationship with the little daughter in this movie. Like, oh my god, they were adorable. Like, she was adorable, they were adorable. This movie was so cute. I mean, it was a little bit more emotional than we were expecting, like especially at the beginning. Like, we were all sitting there like awkwardly crying and it was just such a perfect movie for Father's Day. Like, couldn't ask for a better movie to watch with my dad on Father's Day. I did watch a little bit, like about an hour of Fear Street 1994, and I just, sadly, this just wasn't for me. I don't know if it felt because it was just too like young adult, or it felt like it was trying to be too much like Scream, but it couldn't ever be like Scream. I don't know what it is, but sometimes like the newer horror movies, I just don't vibe with them as much, especially when they're slashers. Like, the only slashers I tend to really enjoy are the more like old school slashers. I don't know, I usually tend to find that I don't really like the newer ones as much. I don't know why or how to explain these things, but that's just how I felt about it. So instead, I shut off Fear Street and I turned on Scream 3 because I finally watched this one. I've only seen the first and the second movies in this series so far, but I finally watched Scream 3 and I thought this one was also really good. Like, I'm just a huge fan of this Scream franchise. I loved on this one how it was mostly like a movie set because they're making movies out of like Sydney's story now, and how there was a killer like going around killing off people on the movie set. I just thought that was so interesting. And you know, I always keep coming back to these movies because of Courtney Cox and David Arquette. Like, they're just so cute. Like, I just ship it so hard and I just really adore them. So like, they're the main reasons why I keep coming back to these movies. I know I still need to see the fourth one. I kind of want to save it for like the Halloween time this year, but I definitely have plans to watch the fourth movie. And I know there's like a fifth one coming out next year. Ooh! And then I watched Black Widow. We were gonna go and see this in theaters, but then we ended up feeling pretty lazy, so we just ended up buying it on Disney Plus and watching it at home. This movie was good. I was surprised. Like, I was hearing mixed reviews on this one too, and so I kind of went in with like my expectations a little bit lowered. But I always have loved Natasha's character in the Avengers, so I was really curious to learn more about her backstory. I just feel like it's weird that Marvel keeps doing these weird things where like the timeline is so screwed up, because Black Widow was supposed to come out like in between like Civil Civil War and like Endgame or something. I don't even know. When the timeline gets so messed up like this, it makes it frustrating because then I feel like for the future when people try to watch these Marvel movies, it's gonna be so confusing trying to figure out like what order to watch them in. And it's also like, why couldn't we have just gotten this movie like years ago, you know? But I did just genuinely love this movie so much. Florence Pugh was freaking spectacular in this role. I loved her in this movie. I feel like she really stole the show for me. She was the highlight of the film. I also really loved David Harbour in this role. Like, I thought he was so freaking funny. Like, he was just cracking me up. Like, he's always just really great in everything he's in, but I especially loved him in this. And like, oh my god, the relationship between Natasha and, you know, Florence Pugh, like, it was just so cute. It was so good. It made me cry. I was like a little tad emotional. And then we watched Suicide Squad. I wasn't really a huge fan of the original like first Suicide Squad that came out a couple years ago, so I went into this one with pretty low expectations, and to be honest, I only really watched it because Rachel is a huge fan of Harley Quinn and Suicide Squad, and so I pretty much watched it because of my sister. But I'm genuinely surprised by this one. I will admit the first half of this movie I feel like is really slow, and it has a lot of really unnecessary graphic gore violence that I was just like why? These characters really grew on me throughout this movie, and I actually thought the villain aspect of this movie was really interesting and really unique, and so I really ended up loving the second half of the movie. And by the time it was over, I was kind of sad that it was already over. Like, it just felt like it went by really fast in the second half. I really love Harley's character in this, and I also really love King Shark. But yeah, there were some really like surprising things that were happening towards the end of this movie, and I don't know, overall, I thought it was great. And then the last movie I very recently just watched is this movie called I See You. I saw that this was a like horror thriller movie that was available on Amazon Prime, and it just came out in 2019, but I had never heard of it. And I watched the trailer and I thought it looked so interesting, and I saw that this movie was on a lot of people's letterboxd list of like hidden gem kind of movies and stuff like that, so I just decided to watch it, and oh my god, this movie was freaking crazy. Like, this movie is so cool because in the first half it really feels like very horror and very like intense and spooky, and then the second half of the movie feels very like thrillery to me, and it just gets so intense and it's like, what the fuck? But I just thought this movie was so good. It was so surprising. It had like a ton of really good plot twists in this movie, and like, I don't know, it's not like the best thriller that I've ever seen in my life, but this movie has some tricks up its sleeve, you know? Like, it's there to surprise you, and that's all I really could ask for in a thriller. And it was just a lovely surprise. Like, I don't know why more people aren't talking about this movie, because it was just so crazy, and there's so much to talk about after you see this, because you're just like, what? Alright, and now to get on to all of the different TV shows that I've been watching. Oh my goodness. The first TV show I wanted to tell you about is freaking Schitt's Creek. Oh my god, yeah, I did watch this like all the way back in March, but I flew through this entire show with all of its seasons in like about 3 weeks. And it's crazy because I actually tried watching this show probably like a year or two ago, and I only got like 2 episodes in or something, and I was like, this is dumb, it's not my thing. But then I kept seeing this year at like the Golden Globes, or it was the Emmys, I don't remember, but it kept winning award after award after award, so I was like, okay, like there's gotta be something about this show, I'm just gonna continue with it. And my mom has always really loved this show and trying to get me to watch it, so I'm like, okay, whatever, I'm just gonna push past and just try to watch it. And I'm so glad that I did! The show is just everything. Oh my god, we're just like following this rich family who basically like loses all of their money and has to go live in this small town called Schitt's Creek, and they're gonna be living at this local motel, and these characters just grow on you so freaking fast, because like, I will admit, the beginning you're just like annoyed with them and they're just like obnoxious the whole time, but this family just grew on me so fast, and I just love this show. It has one of my favorite romances that I've ever witnessed with my eyeballs on TV. David is one of my favorite characters that I've ever seen. He's just so quotable and just so great. I mean, all the characters are just really great on this show, but my personal favorite is David, and then I really also love Alexis and Moira, of course. The Moira accent is just like a thing, you know? It's just like iconic. And I also just love the representation on this show, you know, because David's character is pansexual, and it's just so rare to see representation like this on screen, and to also see a small town that's just so supportive and like not toxic. It's just beautiful. Like, we love to see it. I want to be in Schitt's Creek. And then I did end up finishing WandaVision. I kind of mentioned that I was watching this in my last what I've watched, but since filming that other one, I have finished the show, and WandaVision was just everything. Oh my god, it was so beautiful. The ending of WandaVision made me cry so hard that I don't want to talk about it, okay? But seriously, Elizabeth Olsen in this role, like, she is one of my faves. She's one of my fave Avengers. I just absolutely love her. I adore her. It was just so great. It was so beautiful. And then we watched The Baker and the Beauty, and we ended up watching this on Netflix, and I was sad to find out that this show got canceled after one season, because I feel like this first season was just like really fun. It's just following this girl who's like this celebrity, and then we follow this guy who's like this small town dude in Florida, and he owns this bakery with his family, and they meet at this restaurant at the very beginning of the show, and then they just kind of have this like whirlwind crazy romance, and it's like the baker and the beauty and whatever. And I don't know, I thought it was so cute. It reminded me a lot of Jane the Virgin, just like the style of the storytelling and just like the characters and the family. It also was just so like heartwarming, and I just absolutely adored all of the characters. I especially loved the main character's dude's brother. I just thought he was so freaking cute, and he was like into his like DJing, and like I just loved his character. I just thought it was like one of those like comfort shows, you know, like it just had such a great family on the show, and I don't understand why this show got canceled. I'm sad. And then I watched Cruel Summer. Oh my god, this is like one of my new favorite thriller type of shows. This show is so cool because it takes place in the 90s, and we're following on 3 separate years. So we get like 3 different timelines happening throughout the show, and we jump back and forth between each one of them in each episode. But we're following this one girl, Jeanette, this other popular girl named Kate. And in the first episode, you find out that Kate had gone missing, and something has happened where we don't know why we're following this girl, Jeanette, in the first episode. And this show is just absolutely fascinating. It was so surprising. Like, even up until the last episode, I was like, what the fuck is this? And this show has one of those, like, endings, like the very, very ending. It'll make you scream. Like, you'll just be like, what the fuck? I'm actually surprised that this show is getting a second season, because I'm not totally sure if the show needs a second season, and I'm confused if it's gonna be like following the same characters or not. Jeanette is like one of my least favorite characters that I've ever watched on TV. Like, she's just so frustrating. I mean, the only characters on the show that I could actually stand, to be honest, is Vince. Like, Vince is definitely my favorite character on the show, and then also Kate. I really liked Kate's character. And then I ended up watching the show Panic, and I actually watched this show early as a screener on Amazon, because I was able to do an interview with the author Lauren Oliver and one of the actresses, Jessica Sula, and that was really, really cool. So I was really excited to watch the show. And I feel like this show, it feels very similar to a lot of like other kind of like young adult things. We're following this group of high schoolers, and there's this game called Panic in their town where they compete in all these kinds of crazy things in order to win money at the end of it. And I thought that this show was really like quick to watch. It was really fun. The ending of it did just get a tad bit like cheesy in my opinion, but overall I had a great time watching the show. I thought it was really entertaining. And then we watched Mare of Easttown, and this is a show that's on HBO. It has Kate Winslet as the star in it, and she's playing this detective in this show, and this show was just stunning. The show kind of feels like it could have been inspired by a book or something, just because it's just so well written. And I feel like this is another one of those shows where you kind of like are probably annoyed by Kate Winslet's character at the beginning of this, or you just don't like understand her that well, but then as the show goes on, you just like grow this affection and like love for these characters. And the show also has some tricks up its sleeve, because oh my god, by the ending there were like so many good plot twists and so many things happening. I was like, what the fuck? Like, you think you know, you think you figured it out, and then you don't. I just loved it. I just thought it was so well done, so freaking well acted, and just so good. I also feel like if you enjoyed the book Long Bright River, then you'll probably love this. It just has a very similar vibe to that book for some reason. And then I also started watching the show Them on Amazon Prime. I am about 7 episodes into the show right now, so I haven't finished it yet, but my god, this show is incredible. This show is about this black family who moves to Compton, California in the 1950s, and at that time, it's a really, really white neighborhood, and all of their neighbors are just like aggressively, actively trying to get them out of this neighborhood. The show really does feel Jordan Peele inspired, or it just has that kind of vibe like Get Out, you know, it's just really dark and really intense, and the white people in this show are just so fucking frustrating and crazy, and my heart honestly just breaks for this family in this show. Like, the show is really hard to watch, and I feel like that's why I've only seen the first 7 episodes, because each episode gets harder and harder to stomach, and some of the things that this family has gone through, like there was a particular scene, I think it was in episode 6, that just literally made me sick to my stomach. Like, I don't know, I didn't know if I could watch anymore, you know, because it was hard to watch that. But this show is just so great. It's so well acted, it's so well written, And the feeling of unease throughout this entire show is there the whole time. But I'm really looking forward to finishing it. I just needed some time because it got to be a little bit too much at times. I also recently started watching Never Have I Ever on Netflix. This is the second season that I'm starting to watch for this show. And this show is really cute. I feel like this isn't a show that I like actively watch. It's just kind of something that I have in the background sometimes. But it's also just like a really cute, soft, young adult show about this girl who's just navigating high school and relationships, and I can't decide in the show if I like the narrator or not. I find him to be like a little bit tad bit cheesy. I feel like a narrator in the show like this became more popular after Jane the Virgin. Like, it's something that I'm seeing more and more. And in Jane the Virgin, it worked really well for me, but in some other things, I just don't know how I feel about it. But also, I just really adore Devi as a main character. I just find her to be really funny and really interesting. And I just really love her family in the show. I love her relationship that she has with her mom and her sister. And I don't know, it's a cute show. And then the last show that I wanted to talk about that I just recently finished watching is The White Lotus. And this one is also on HBO. And this one is just, this show's like hard to describe because as far as genre goes, I don't even really know what this falls into. But it's described as a comedy drama. It's also got a little bit of mystery in it as well. The basic premise is that we're following a bunch of different rich white people who are coming to this island in Hawaii, and they're staying at this resort called the White Lotus while they're on their trip. And then we also follow the manager of the White Lotus and all of his crazy shenanigans as he tries to deal with all of these crazy ass white people. The show is just entertaining as fuck. It's only 6 episodes long, so it's not like a very long thing, and the mystery of the show is like not the most satisfying thing ever. Like, if you're watching it for the mystery, you're probably not going to enjoy it that much, but I just personally loved these characters so much. Especially Armin's character. He's like the highlight of the show for me. He was just so entertaining to watch, and he's just such a great actor. Like, he really brought that character to life. I also just really love Connie Britton. I love her in everything that I see her in, and she's just so good in this show as well. So just really love the score of this show and like the theme song and just like the vibe. This show made me want to go back to Hawaii so freaking badly. It's just so beautiful and aesthetically pleasing to look at. And I don't know, the show was just highly entertaining. Like, every episode I was just like cracking up. It was just like really awkward, like dark comedy. And there were some surprising as fuck things that happened in the show. And also, warning, there's a lot of intense nudity in the show. You know, it's HBO. They can pretty much do whatever. But yeah, I really enjoyed it. I had the best time watching this. I'm really excited now that it's finally getting to this time of year, like the fall time of the year is when I like to watch more of like the spooky movies and get back into more of my backlist of what I need to watch still. I have so many different spooky movies that I would like to watch throughout this spooky season, and there's so many exciting things still coming out. Like, I know the movie The Night House is getting so much hype right now for horror movies, and then Candyman as well is one that I would like to see. Like, there's so many great things coming out at this time of year. I know Dune is coming out very soon as well. Like, what the heck? There's just so much to look forward to. So very excited about that. If you've watched or seen any of these movies or TV shows, let me know what are your thoughts on them, or what is something that you've been watching lately that you've really been enjoying. Thank you so much for watching as always, and I will see you very soon with another video. Bye. What are we fighting for? Back into